I'd like to begin this by saying I'm not an expert on any subject that I talk about. I'm just a guy that was interested in these things and decided to look them up and put them together in a YouTube video just in case anyone else was interested in real world inspiration for these names. For the guns that have it, we'll also dive into a bit of the lore and how they affect the universe of Destiny. For the first video, we're going to talk about auto rifles from Destiny 1. We're not including raid weapons, Iron Banner, or Trials. Those are saved for another video. I would also like to add, and I'm going to paraphrase something Bungie said, some guns were named just because the words sounded cool together. Links to my references and for further reading are in the comments below, and please, if you like the video, leave a like. It really helps me validate myself and inflate my ego. Comment to yell at me and tell me I did terrible research and got everything wrong to deflate said ego. And if you want to subscribe so we can monetize this content, really, it's free to you and the best way to support a creator. That said, I do stream on Twitch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at around 7 p.m. Pacific to about 11 p.m. Pacific. So if you like the sound of my voice and you want to see the look of my face, go ahead and check me out there. And then to get back to the video, Arminius. The commander-turned-rebel Arminius is most well known for his victorious ambush in the Teutoburg forest of Germania. Regarded as Rome's greatest defeat, it eventually led to Augustus abandoning his conquest of the territory altogether. After several victories, Arminius became the most powerful leader in Germania. In just a short 10 years after the Battle of the Teutoburg forest, he was betrayed and killed by his relatives. Extremophile. An extremophile is defined as a microorganism that lives in conditions of extreme temperature, acidity, alkalinity, or chemical concentration. Basically, they're single-celled organisms that live in places harmful to people. Cassiopeia. Literally named after the queen from Greek mythology that declared herself and her daughter Andromeda more beautiful than all the sea nymphs. This angered Poseidon, who in retribution sent the Cetus, a giant sea monster, to destroy the country she ruled. To save her country, Cassiopeia consulted an oracle that told her the only way to appease the god was to sacrifice her daughter, so Andromeda was chained to a rock near the sea to await the Cetus, because that's what you do to the people you love. But unfortunately, the hero Perseus arrived, killed the great beast, and saved Andromeda. Obviously, I'm joking about the whole unfortunate thing. Not wanting Cassiopeia to escape punishment, Poseidon chained her to a chair in the heavens where she remains to this day and still be seen in the sky on a good starry night. In the lore, Cassiopeia is also the name of a ghost found in a grimoire introduced in Rise of Iron. There's a link up top and in the description below. Izdubar. Izdubar is the literal translation of the ideography for Gilgamesh. Because of when the saga of Izdubar was written, only fragments of the epic Gilgamesh were found. It wasn't until years later when another tablet was found in which Izdubar can finally be equated to the story of Gilgamesh. Basically, Izdubar is a mistranslation. There are several small differences between what we know as the Epic of Gilgamesh and the story of Izdubar. One obviously being the name. A demigod and king, he is known for slaying an ogre, falling in love with the goddess Ishtar, turning down the goddess Ishtar, having a bull sent to kill him by the goddess Ishtar. For more on the Epic of Gilgamesh, see the link in the comments below. Cydonia. The region of Mars known as Cydonia got its name from the ancient Greek city-state located on the island of Crete. Cydonia is the location of what is known as the face on Mars. Considering Destiny is a game full of space travel and Mars is the location we can go to, I feel safe in saying it was named after the location of Mars and not after the city-state. Antipodal Hindsight. I think this is one of those two words that sound cool names Bungie likes to come up with. Antipodal basically means the opposite of or opposite side of, and hindsight meaning you have understanding only after an event occurs. So presumably the opposite of hindsight, which goes along with the flavor text. Nope, still don't see it. 0-day dilemma. With the flavor text, there's no defense against it. This is almost assuredly referring to what is known as a 0 day and what exactly we are to do about it. A 0 day is basically a bug that can be exploited that is either unknown or unaddressed by the developer and exploited before it can be patched or fixed. The term refers to the fact that developers have 0 days to fix the bug since it's already out in the wild. People have exploited it already. I guess the dilemma is, with them being virtually undetectable before they are exploited and without anyone knowing they are there, do you save yourself time by not looking for them and hoping no one finds them, or do you try and protect yourself from them and the potential for them to be detected in the future? An answering chord. I knew I'd heard this term before. I just wasn't exactly sure, so I spent some time trying to track down its origin. The best description I could find of what an answering chord is comes from a book titled How to Play from a Fake Book. It reads, and I'm paraphrasing, the left hand plays an answering chord. By itself, the second chord would be considered an inversion of the first chord, but in the context of the whole measure, it is considered a continuation of the root position established in the first beat. In other words, our ears tend to retain the bass note established on a strong beat. The answering chord can be considered part of the preceding bass note. In the case of the auto rifle, let no challenge lie, let no question hang, let no music fade. Shingen. Takeda Shingen was a feudal lord that fought for control of the Kanto Plain in Japan, on Honshu, the largest island of Japan, during the Warring States period of the 16th century. As one of the most powerful leaders in Japan, he posed a threat to Oda Nobunaga, the lord famous for his attempt to unify Japan. He ultimately died outside of battle. The film The Shadow Warrior depicts a well-known version of his death in which he is shot by a sniper at night, but other reports have him dying from an old war wound or pneumonia. Needless to say, no one exactly sure how he died. There's a lot of information about this guy, and I highly suggest looking up some of the stories about him or checking out the movies The Shadow Warrior and Heaven and Earth. Not the Tommy Lee Jones one, not that it isn't a good film, just not the one we want. Look in the description for links. Does not bow. A Kell cut off his arm. He built himself new ones. Then he killed the Kell with them. This gun is from the Shadow Thief Strike, in which Varric states, among other things, that Tannix kneels before no banner. The flavor text is a story of Tannix, who had his arms cut off by a Kell and so grafted new ones onto himself before taking his revenge. For more information on Tannix, click the little button that pops up somewhere. Galahad. A name meaning pure, noble, and selfless, the class of auto rifle known as Galahad is most likely referring to Sir Galahad, the perfect knight. In Arthurian legend, he is the son of Sir Lancelot, destined for the Siege Perilous, an awesome name for a gun if I do say so myself. Get on it, Bungie. According to Merlin, the seat was reserved for the knight who would be successful in finding the Holy Grail. Every knight that took the seat previously died soon after until Galahad arrived and no harm came to him. He is the knight that removed the sword from the stone. Upon doing so, King Arthur proclaimed him the greatest knight in the world, and he was the first knight to see the Holy Grail, and upon doing so, wished to choose his time of death, finally used that wish to ascend to heaven shortly after. Kvostov? When researching the Kvostov, a few names popped up that stuck out to me. Oleg Kvostov, a modern painter born in 1972, Dmitry Kvostov, a poet born in 1757, and Alexander Kvostenko Kvostov, an avant-garde artist born in 1895. Sorry for butchering all those names. Unfortunately, there really isn't much to go on here. I want to roll out Oleg because Bungie likes to pull from our idea of history, not so much what we consider current, but would be considered history in universe, if that makes any sense. Dmitry seems the most likely as a source of inspiration, account, and from what I could gather, a heavily mocked poet in his time. I found a few translations of his poetry, but they made absolutely no sense to me. There's a link in the description if you'd like to look yourself. I think this one is probably something that was chosen because it sounded cool. My best guess is they chose the name in reference to the Kalashnikov, since the game takes place in Russia and those guns are widely popular, probably popular enough to find one leading against the box in the far future. Longespée. Turns out there are two William Longespée, father and son. The first was the illegitimate son of King Henry II. He held the title of Earl of Salisbury, famous for their stakes, as well as other titles that he earned through his military career. He was a baron, a commander, and a loyalist to the king. The other, William Longespée, has a lot more information about him, and my assumption is this is the guy the gun was named after. The younger was involved in two crusades. During the 7th Crusade of 1247, Longespée's second he was involved with, he went to Rome and pleaded to the Pope for support and successfully gained his favor and raised a company of 200 English horses to join with King Louis and command the English forces. Reports state he was lured into attacking the Mamluks by a French count before the king had arrived. It was this that ultimately led to his death and fueled growing animosity towards the French. Or just because the name means longsword and it fits well with the medieval inspired names of things in Destiny. Carte Blanche. I knew the basic definition of this one: complete freedom to act however one wishes, a French term from the 17th century meaning blank paper, as in you are given a blank paper to write whatever you wish, particularly in terms of an agreement. Zarinaea. Zarinaea was a ruler of the Saka, a group of nomadic Iranians. Her name means the golden. She was exceptionally beautiful, wise, and brave, as in the culture the Saka women went into battle alongside the men. Her story goes, one day while out for a hunt, she had to move into another territory because wars had left her home barren. Unfortunately, while on the hunt, she came across a large group of enemy forces. They chased after her and wounded her leg. The horse of the Prince of the Medes soon overtook her and wanted to kill her when he noticed her long hair coming out of her helmet, and he fell in love with her and returned her to her people. After this, Zarinaea and the Mede prince went on hunts together, and their friendship and feelings grew and led to peace between the two nations. At one point, she stopped her husband from killing the prince, and the prince proposed they unite their two nations. Zarinaea rejected the offer, preferring her nation's independence over her own personal feelings. The prince suffered, but accepted her will in the end. Monte Carlo. As its main perk suggests, this gun was named after the Monte Carlo method, an algorithm that uses repeated random sampling to make numerical estimations of unknown parameters. It's a form of risk analysis. In terms of destiny, I believe it's referring to the method the gun employs to grant you your melee back. Each bullet fired is a new sampling, and once it randomly hits a certain parameter, it gives you your melee back. That's just my best guess, at least.
Whether we wanted it or not, we've stepped into a war with the Cabal on Mars. So let's get to taking out their command, one by one. Valus to Arik. From what I can gather, he commands the siege dancers from an Imperial land tank outside of Rubicon. He's well protected. But with the right team, we can punch through those defenses, take this beast out, and break their grip on Freehold.
Zhalo Supercell. Zala, a Russian word meaning sting, stinger, or dart, was the name of a few APCs, or armored personnel carriers, and tanks. It's hard to say whether Bungie chose the name because of its relation to warfare and weaponry, or its English translation. A supercell is a system that produces severe thunderstorms with rotating winds sustained by a prolonged updraft that could result in tornadoes or hail. Pretty clear to see why they chose supercell if you've used this gun before at all. Fabian Strategy. Wait for enemy to make a mistake, die, stand by for ghost resurrection, repeat as necessary. Named after the Roman general Fabius Concatus, the strategy favors wars of attrition over large-scale conflict through small skirmishes. The strategy came from Fabius's war against the Carthaginian general Hannibal in southern Italy. At the start of the war, Hannibal crossed the Alps and invaded Italy. He quickly achieved 2 crushing victories over the Romans. After these losses, the Romans appointed Fabius as dictator. Fabius then initiated his war of attrition through constant skirmishes and limiting the Carthaginians' ability to forage for food. Hannibal, as the commander of an invading force, was cut off from his home country by the difficulty of seaborne resupply. His only hope was gaining the support of allies. He planned to convince Rome's allies to join his side by winning battles and through negotiation. Fabius calculated this and avoided engaging with Hannibal in pitched battles as to deprive him of victories. Along with sending small detachments against Hannibal's foraging parties, he also ordered villages in the path of Hannibal's armies to burn their crops and to hide in fortified towns. Fabius concluded this would wear down the Carthaginians' endurance and discourage Rome's allies from going over to the enemy's side. Once Hannibal's forces had been weakened and demoralized, Fabius launched a decisive battle with his legions and crushed Hannibal once and for all. Although a military success, the strategy was a political failure and he was soon removed from his command. And that's it for part 1 of auto rifles. So it turns out the database that I used to get these auto rifle names from was incomplete, and I recently found a complete database of all the auto rifles in Destiny 1, and it looks like I missed quite a few. So we're going to be doing a part 2 for auto rifles soon. It looks like it's going to be a little bit shorter of a video because I kind of blew all the exotics in this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like to let me know, add a comment to tell me how terrible I am, and if you want to add me to your homepage so we don't have to rely on the odds of YouTube recommending me, you can subscribe, but only if you want to. No pressure.